Hi everyone, a very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock. You're very welcome to spend your breakfast with us here at Sky News. The race to offer every adult in the UK a vaccine is entering the home straight, according to NHS leaders. But can the same be said for the relaxation of lockdown? We'll ask the Environment Secretary George Eustace in just a moment. Also this morning, we're joined by the Chair of the Health Select Committee, Jeremy Hunt, to discuss the toll it's taken on the nation's health workers. Also this morning for you.
Sven-Göran Eriksson has breathed new life into England. What a turnaround in 12 months.
A certain former England manager joins us at 9:30 with just a few days to go before the team's bid for European glory kicks off. Who does he think might be our star player? And in addition to that, a bit of this.
As the world watched on, another black life gone, leaving what we thought we knew in tatters. What we thought we knew, some clearly didn't. Black lives matter.
The leader of the dance troupe Diversity, Ashley Banjo, is on the show at 9:45, fresh from winning a BAFTA for that now famous Black Lives Matter routine. It's Tuesday, the 8th of June. Vaccine booster, 6 months since the first COVID jab was given. Over 25s get the call, but fresh fears over Freedom Day going ahead. Anger and disappointment as holidaymakers rush back from Portugal to dodge the amber list deadline, which has passed in the last few hours. 3.7 tonnes of drugs, 20 threats to kill, and 45 million in cash. How police in Australia helped infiltrate an encrypted messaging service to deal a hammer blow to organised crime. The England and Wales Cricket Board says a second cricketer is being investigated over historical offensive social media posts. Death spiral. Activists accuse world leaders of not doing enough to help save our oceans from climate change and destructive fishing.
And it's hotting up this week with heatwave conditions for some spots this weekend. Until then, it's not looking warm and settled everywhere. I'll have the details for you later.
Hello, everybody. We've come a long way in the last 6 months since the first vaccine was administered in the UK to 91-year-old Margaret Keenan. Since then, more than 68 million doses have been administered, and from today, over 25s in England are also being offered their jab. But elsewhere, there remains uncertainty over whether the Prime Minister will give the green light to the final stage of lifting the lockdown, with concerns over the Delta variant leading to reports the so-called Freedom Day could be delayed. Shingi Mariike reports.
6 months ago, at a hospital in Coventry, this 90-year-old grandmother made history. Since Margaret Keenan became the first person in the world to receive a COVID jab, the vaccine rollout has continued at speed. There has been a total of around 68 million vaccines given, with more than 40 million people getting their first dose and almost 27 million people receiving both. And now, from today, millions of young adults will get their turn.
It's such an important milestone, opening up access to jabs to the final priority group, the 18 to 29-year-olds. And that's why when the 25 to 29-year-olds in the next few days get that text message inviting them to come in, it's really important that they book that appointment and get their first jab.
Plenty of people are excited to seize on this invitation. They see immunity as a chance to continue enjoying recently restored freedoms with added protection.
I'm very happy about that. I was waiting for that day, and now I can finally make an appointment, and that's good news.
It makes you feel a lot more comfortable, I'll say that, knowing that you've taken the precautions necessary.
Last week even, I was queuing at the St Thomas Hospital in Westminster trying to get the leftover ones, but even then, I think there's so many people trying to get it.
But with cases of the Delta variant rising, others warn the vaccine rollout is not enough to prevent a third wave.
We've been discussing whether or not we're going into a serious third wave, and I don't think we can possibly wait any longer. This is the evidence of another wave appearing.
If scenes like these are anything to go by, we can expect long queues when vaccine centres open their doors to 20-somethings. They've waited long enough. Shingi Mariike, Sky News.
Environment Secretary is with us, Mr Eustace. Good morning. It's
morning.
Lovely to see you. Freedom Day may be pushed back at least a fortnight, is what we're hearing in the papers this morning. What credence are we giving to that?
Well, look, the Prime Minister's always said he's going to take this a step at a time, and that with each set of relaxations, they're going to basically assess the data when we get there. So we can't make the final assessment until the 14th of June. That's what he said all along. And we obviously don't rule anything out. The critical test, really, is are those people with the new variant, are people who've had the vaccine getting infected. There have been a couple of cases, I think, not many. It's encouraging, and we're obviously making good progress on the vaccination. But it's too early to say yet. What we'll do, we'll be announcing that next Monday.
OK. Apparently there was a briefing yesterday to the Prime Minister and others from Vallance and Whitty suggesting the figures are, at this stage, grim. Which side are you on moving it back or not, as we speak today?
Well, I'm not sure I would say it's grim, in that we've seen an increase.
Those were their words.
Yes, well, we've seen an increase, obviously, in the infection rate. So that's gone up, ticked up. If you look at the graph that we're all seeing now on the news every evening, it's gone up, that's for sure. But what we're not seeing at the moment is that growth in hospitalisations associated with it. And that's because we know that if people have the vaccine, particularly once they've had the second jab of the vaccine, it actually does give them immunity to this new strain that's around. But there have been a few cases of people who've had the double jab who've then gone on still to get that to get infected again, and that's why we need to look very closely at this.
Watch the news in the morning as well as the evening.
Yes, of course.
One of the biggest factors, of course, is the India variant. If only we closed our border a little bit earlier, when we did with Pakistan and Bangladesh, that might have made all the difference.
Well, this has been a dynamic situation all along, things moving very quickly. We closed the border to Bangladesh because we were seeing, if people arriving from there, a higher incidence of the coronavirus. And, although, we also know that India was testing much more. So the numbers that they were picking up, you'd expect them to pick up more because they were doing more testing. As soon as we saw that surge in India as well, we obviously closed the border. So we review this all of the time, the travel bans. Every few weeks, we're reviewing who's in those lists. And India was added as soon as the data supported that.
Well, I'm just looking at the figures. I mean, Ed Conway, our economics editor, was looking at the figures on our behalf quite recently. 25th of March to the 7th of April, and these are NHS test and trace figures. Bangladesh was at 3.7%. They were put on the red list. India was at 5.1% of people arriving had tested positive, and yet they weren't put on the red list. Why do you think that was?
Well, look, this was obviously a few weeks ago. My understanding is that India had a higher incidence rate that it was reporting, but that's because it was doing more testing.
The test and trace figures here, not what happened in India, but when people were arriving in this country, of those arriving, according to the NHS test and trace, there were a bigger percentage of people from India who were positive than Bangladesh, and yet we put Bangladesh on the red list.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the data, that, as I understand, yes. Well, as I understand it, and Matt Hancock made this clear at the time, initially the incidence of the virus in people arriving from India was lower, and overall, while they were reporting high numbers of cases, that's because they were doing more testing. Now, I don't know the date of that particular. It may be that that was just
25th of March to the 7th of April.
Right. Well, I haven't seen that particular data, I have to be honest. Okay. But my understanding is that the reason we put Bangladesh on the list earlier is that they were seeing higher instances.
I mean, their figures were lower. Look, they're the ones at the top bar.
Yes.
Their figures were lower.
Well, I know that they were testing less and so reporting fewer cases.
No, I'm talking about NHS test and trace once people came into the UK.
Well, we were also looking at factors such as their ability to do genome sequencing, and we're looking at all of this when we assess other countries, their ability to be able to pick up new variants of concern, for instance. And India does have better testing in place than other countries like Bangladesh.
I'm talking about the figures in the UK, not about what happened in India or indeed the other two countries that we talked about. Was it a political decision?
No, it's not. So they regularly review this based on recommendations that come from SAGE and the Joint Biosecurity Committee. They look at that data and they make those assessments at the time.
But we were very keen for the Prime Minister to go to India at that time, around that period, weren't we? Because we wanted to do a trade deal with India. So it was in the interests of the British government to keep the border open with India.
Well, look,
I mean, it's fair to say that.
Well, I don't. That's not the reason. So the Prime Minister was, yes, due to travel to India, but we then put India on the red list, and that obviously was cancelled a couple of weeks before he was due to go.
But that was a couple of weeks after you did it with Pakistan and Bangladesh.
Yes, but I mean, as I said, my understanding is, and this was covered at great length at the time, that we had fewer concerns about India at the time because they were testing more, and also because on arrivals, my understanding is that they were showing a lower incidence rate.
Certainly lower than Pakistan, but not lower than Bangladesh by any margin. Bangladesh was at 3.7%. India was at 5.1% when they were arriving here in the United Kingdom. I was reading a report from, he is Associate Professor in Cellular Microbiology, Dr. Simon Clark, and he was saying that he felt that there was probably a political element because the UK wanted a trade deal with India and the Prime Minister wanted to go. That's nonsense.
Yes, that's been dealt with at the time. Matt Hancock's been asked. I think he's explained at great length that the criteria that we've been applying when assessing who should be on the red list are what the incidence rate is that's reported, but also their capacity to do testing, their capacity to pick up variants of concern, the incidence of those that are arriving. So there's a range of factors that are looked at. It's not just one single measure.
Yeah,
and India was added as soon as we saw a spike in rates and as soon as we saw there was a reason for doing so.
And as the rest, as they say, is history. On reflection, do you think it's appropriate that the British government apologise for not closing the border sooner?
Well, look, we're going to have a review into the whole pandemic and how it was conducted. There's going to be an inquiry that starts next year. That's going to look at great depth at everything, right from the beginning of this pandemic, right the way through, how people reacted. If there were lessons to be learned, then we should wait for that inquiry to do its work and then we'll learn any lessons.
We've certainly closed the border very quickly with Portugal, haven't we? People had to get in by 4 o'clock this morning or thereabouts. Swiftly moved from the green list to the amber list. Do you think probably on balance it's better that people holiday at home this year?
Well, look, basically now there are very few countries on that green list. Our advice all along has been don't travel unless it's absolutely necessary. Obviously, we had hoped with these 3 categories that we had, we'd hoped that the situation would be improving in other parts of the world, that we'd be able to progressively add other countries to the green list. Sadly, that's not the situation. We do have this new variant of concern, first identified in India, that is now cropping up in other countries. And we've just got to take a very cautious approach. The most important thing is that we can continue to open up our own economy, get back to life as normal here. The biggest threat to that is that we would have a variant come from another country that would find a way of getting around the vaccine. That's the biggest threat to us at the moment. That's why we should be really cautious.
Yeah. So do you think people, I don't know, would you rather holiday in Iceland or would you go down to your home county of Cornwall?
I shall be
You'll be in
spending
Cornwall, I'm sure.
Cornwall
But what should people do? Should they risk a green list given that people have had to scurry back very quickly?
Well, look, people will make their own individual judgments on this.
What do you think? I mean, it's a very dynamic situation at the moment.
It is. I will be staying at home. I've no intention of travelling or going on a holiday abroad this summer. Some people may, but they have to understand that there are obviously risks in doing so because it is a dynamic situation. But I think most people will probably decide this year to stay at home, holiday at home. We've got some fabulous places to visit in this part of the country, not least, of course, Cornwall, although it'll be a very, very busy summer, I'm sure, Dan.
And that's the right thing to do?
I think my advice to people would be a holiday at home. We've got some great places here. There aren't many countries that are on that red list. But obviously, you know, some people will want to travel abroad. There are still a small number of countries on that green list. If they want to do that, they can. But obviously, they'll have to understand that there are risks in doing so as well.
And with some of them, get the map out as well. I didn't know where some of those places were. A lot of G7 leaders, of course, coming to your home county. Do we have a special relationship with the US?
I think we always have had a special relationship with the United States. We're important allies, have been now ever since the Second World War. We've been through a lot together as countries. So, yes, we are important allies, always have been, regardless of who's in the White House.
I read the Prime Minister said today that it makes us sound needy and weak to say we have a special relationship.
Well, it depends how you see it. If you see the special relationship as meaning that we always have to go to the United States to work with them on things, people may see it that way. But actually, a special relationship could also be a special bond of trust where you work together on things, and that's what our relationship is.
I mean, we do need a trade deal with them, and we would be weak without it.
We wouldn't be weak without a trade deal with the United States, no. But obviously, we would like to do a trade deal with the United States.
We'd be weaker without one, wouldn't we?
Well, we've got trade deals with other countries around the world. We do a lot of trade with the United States. We have a trade surplus with them. They are an important trading partner. Of course, it would be good to get a trade deal with the United States if we could get one on the right terms.
Brussels are very cross with us at the moment as far as trade deals are concerned there. They're threatening a trade war if the UK overrides the Brexit treaty. We had a government minister sitting where you are yesterday, and she said that the deal with the Northern Ireland border, or the Irish Sea border, is harder than anticipated. Do you agree?
Well, I think what you have to bear in mind is that the protocol always envisaged that both parties would show best endeavours to make the Northern Ireland Protocol work, and that included recognising that Northern Ireland was an integral part of the UK and that you should support the free flow of goods to Northern Ireland. And what we really need the EU to do is to respect that part of the protocol and put in place sensible measures to remove things like the nonsensical ban on selling sausages or chicken nuggets to Northern Ireland, not just requiring paperwork, but actually having an outright ban on some of those goods. That clearly doesn't make sense. It had always been envisaged that there'd be a joint committee process and specialised committees that would look at some of these technical matters to iron out the creases. And we just need the European Union now to engage in that process. And talks, I think, are starting this week.
Indeed, so Lord Frost very much engaged. But do you acknowledge that it is harder than anticipated, this deal, even though you were told at the time by former prime ministers, leader of the CBI, people like that, that it would be a very difficult process?
Well, what I would say is we'd obviously hope that the European Union would engage more fully in the joint committee process and in those specialised committees to identify solutions to some of the issues, such as a ban on the sale of sausages in Northern Ireland, which doesn't make any sense. Other issues as well, such as if you're delivering goods and you're a supermarket and you're going direct to store in Northern Ireland, there's no risk of those goods ending up in the Irish Republic or in the European Union in the single market. So that could be recognised and special measures could be put in place. So there are solutions that are there, using digital technologies to make this work. We're committed to making it work, but we just need the European Union to engage in that process to iron out those issues.
Sausage and chicken McNugget wars, that sounds enticing. Let's see where that takes us over the next few months. I wanted to ask you about a report from Jeremy Hunt. He used to be the Foreign Secretary, was before that the Health Secretary, as you know, a colleague of yours. He's now chairman of the Health and Social Care Select Committee. He says NHS staff are suffering from burnout and they are not being supported the way that they need to be by the government. What would you say in response?
Well, look, we had a manifesto commitment to recruit more nurses, an extra 50,000. We've already recruited 12,000 nurses. You know, we are expanding funding for the NHS. We are recruiting more staff. Yes, of course, they've had a difficult year. If you're dealing with a pandemic, as they've had to, it's been a very difficult time. They've done extraordinarily well. We are doing all we can to support them. But the critical
thing... Not enough, though, is it? That's what he's saying.
Well, I'm not sure what more we can do. They've worked very hard.
I'm guessing they'd say.
Well, there's been a pay rise and there's a review looking at that issue again. But we're also recruiting more staff. And if the issue is that they feel under pressure, and that's entirely understandable, having been through this pandemic, one of the things that we're doing is recruiting more staff, and we've already recruited an extra 12,000 nurses.
Just before I let you go, animal protection. What's the plan?
Animal protection?
Yeah. I know that's why you were here to talk.
Oh, no, oceans. Today is World Oceans Day, and we are announcing today that we're going to accept the recommendations of a review, that we will put in place highly protected marine areas. This is where you would prevent any activity there, whether it's extraction, such as fishing or aggregates, or indeed even wind farms, in order to enable these areas to fully recover. And there are a lot of benefits for the environment in doing that, so we're going to pilot some of those sites.
OK, World Ocean Day. How are you going to celebrate it?
Well, I shall be doing...
It's very close to our heart here at Sky. We love the oceans. As you know, we have massive campaigns to do our bit.
We do, and I think the public are very concerned about plastics in our oceans,
sure, and
very concerned about some of those threats to marine life and indeed overfishing. And it's one of the big issues, actually, that'll be on G7.
Indeed. You're going down there this week?
I should be going down on Wednesday night. It's happening just across St Ives Bay. My constituency's at the other side of that. I've got a number of events that I'll be attending.
Fantastic. It's good to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you. Still to come on the programme for you, we're going to be asking the Environment Secretary, as we heard there, about what's happening in Portugal, officially added to the amber list, forcing British holidaymakers to dash home before new isolation rules kicked in. It's led to anger and frustration, as Ashna Hurinag reports.
Weaving through the arrivals gate just in time, narrowly escaping self-isolation. Hours ago, Portugal was taken off the shrinking green travel list. For many that beat the deadline, it meant both a huge cost and inconvenience.
Cheated. When we left, we were told nothing would change before the 10th. Obviously, we're out there on our family vacation. They changed it to the 7th. Which just stressed out the whole holiday. What choice have you got? Who can stay in for 10 days, you know? I'm self-employed, it's just not feasible. My wife can do it, and it's pretty much everyone coming off the planes in the same boat.
How does it make you feel about travel in the future, the fact that things are so unpredictable?
Well, I think the confidence has gone, isn't it? Because we booked the holiday on the basis that it was a green list country. We didn't really think for one second they would change it this quickly.
The queue started early at Faro Airport, many joining some 10,000 British tourists who've flown home over the past few days. An inevitable reaction the decimated airline industry cannot stand to see any longer. Some of the most powerful players in air travel meeting to express their frustration.
I've been vaccinated, I've been shielding, I've done everything I've been asked to do. I still don't understand why I can't get on an airplane and travel.
Their proposal to heal the wounds, a UK and US travel corridor.
Aviation bosses cite the success of the vaccine rollout on both sides of the Atlantic. It would be significant, as it would mean they could start to claw back the billions of pounds lost by the industry.
The movement on these runways is driven by data and decisions from afar. Those tantalising destinations still feel so far away. Ashna Hurinag, Sky News, Gatwick.
Still to come on the programme for you at 1:45, speaking to the Chief Marketing Officer of Paddy, and that's Kristen Villette-Worth. As MPs on the Health Committee warn NHS and social care staff burnout has reached emergency levels, the committee chair, Jeremy Hunt, joins us at 8:05. 8:20, speaking to journalist and royal biographer Angela Levin about the release of Meghan Markle's new children's book, The Bench, and the arrival of her daughter, Lilibet Diana. 3.7 tonnes of drugs, 20 threats to kill, and 45 million in cash has been uncovered by police in Australia who infiltrated an encrypted messaging service targeting organised crime. Sky News Australia reporter Gabrielle Power is in Sydney for us. Hello to you, Gabrielle. Good morning where we are, good evening where you are. Tell us more about this story.
Kay, this is one of the largest and most significant police operations in Australia's history. Criminals and underworld figures were using this encrypted app called Anom to communicate with one another, and they were plotting murders, they were trafficking billions of dollars worth of drugs and also engaging in other large-scale dangerous criminal activity. But little did they know that this app, Anom, was actually designed by police, and it was designed by police to catch them. And over 3 years, the Australian Federal Police were working with the FBI, and they read in real time more than 25 million messages. As a result, they've now seized 3,000 kilograms worth of drugs. They've seized $45 million in cash, and as a result, 200 Australian people have been arrested and they've been charged. Kay?
OK, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for the update. Thank you. Time for a look at this morning's other main stories for you now here on The Breakfast Show. The Electoral Boundary Commission has announced plans for the biggest shake-up of parliamentary constituencies in England in decades. Among those affected would be the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, whose London seat of Holborn and St Pancras set to be altered and renamed as Kentish Town and Bloomsbury. The new plans would see England gain 10 additional seats at the expense of Wales, due to lose 8, and Scotland, which will be down 2. A Canadian man accused of killing 4 members of a Muslim family in Ontario has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 of attempted murder. The driver ploughed a pickup truck into the family of 5 on Sunday, leaving only 1 survivor. Detectives investigating the attack described it as an Islamophobic hate crime. Second England cricketer is being investigated over historical offensive social media posts. The England and Wales Cricket Board have said within the last couple of hours, or so back late last night, wasn't it? Let's get more on this from our correspondent Charlotte Lomas. Hi, Charlotte, tell us more.
Well, we know now a second England cricketer is being investigated. We don't know who this is. The website wisdom.com did publish the content of this tweet, but concealed the identity of the England cricketer because it's believed he was under 16 at the time. Now, the England Cricket Board have confirmed they're looking into these new claims. Obviously, of course, they come after the suspension of England bowler Ollie Robinson, who was suspended from international cricket for historical offensive tweets that he made in 2012 and 2013 when he was 18 and 19 years old. He's now 27. He has apologised for those tweets and said he's embarrassed by those sexist and racist tweets. We have just heard from the Prime Minister and the Culture Secretary, Oliver Bowden, who've described his suspension as over the top.
OK, lovely. Thank you. Right, let's have a look at what's happening as far as the weather is concerned now. Naz is standing by. It was lovely yesterday, a bit chilly outside of the sun, but what's happening today, Naz?
Today, it's looking fine and dry for many areas. And in fact, through this week, it's going to get hotter. Some spots this weekend could reach heatwave criteria.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. It is going to become warmer over the next few days. In fact, for some spots this weekend, it is going to be rather hot and we could reach heat wave criteria in some areas. And that's due to high pressure that will be dominating by this weekend. But until then, there's still some Atlantic influence going on for the next few days, bringing cloudy skies this morning across many western parts of Ireland, Northern Ireland, western Scotland too. Some patchy light rain and drizzle. Whereas further south and east, as you can see, it's a mainly dry and bright start for this morning. It is rather cool out there and murky as well around some southern and eastern coastal areas. Going into this afternoon, though, lots of sunshine on offer once again, with the winds being light as well. And we've generally got high pressure dominating across many parts of England and Wales. So it's a fine, settled afternoon. Feeling very warm across parts of the east. Not so warm further north and west, where it stays quite cloudy with that lack of sunshine. Patchy light rain and drizzle continuing across many parts of Ireland, Northern Ireland and over Scotland. North East Scotland seeing some showers.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that we all want to wind down a little bit when we reach retirement age. And it's no different for landmine sniffing rodent Magawa. There he is. After 5 years of service, the African giant pouched rat, known as a hero rat, is bringing the curtain down on a stellar career in Cambodia. Magawa is part of Belgian charity APOP, which is an organisation that trains rats to save lives by alerting human handlers to landmines and unexploded bombs so they can safely be removed. The charity says that during his career, Magawa has cleared the equivalent of 31 football pitches and discovered 71 landmines and 38 items of unexploded ordnance, which is pretty impressive for a rat. So now it's time for him to have a well-earned rest. Good for him. Hearing from holidaymakers in just a few moments, test providers and also business owners, as travel is expected to be made more difficult for those wanting a getaway this summer.
Business has been good. You know, we've had strong sales throughout the pandemic, and in particular, clotted cream has been a product that many people across the nation have been choosing to treat themselves with while they've been at home more often. And that's been fantastic. And you know, we're now gearing up for what we're expecting to be a very busy summer here in Cornwall. And the staycation boom that is going on throughout the UK. The reason that jam needs to go on first is that you would love to have this with a hot scone, and if you put your clotted cream onto a hot scone, it will just melt away. So you have that cool layer of jam to keep the cream pristine, sitting on top as the prize part of your cream tea. So there is science behind it as well as a lot of tradition. So that's why we think it's fait accompli. We are. So last year we saw, as I said, the sales of clotted cream go up by some 38% across the UK, and that was driven by more people buying clotted cream that previously hadn't, which was fantastic, and more so outside of the southwest. It's natural heartland for clotted cream. And now, like I said, with the staycation boom coming, and our expectation that the hospitality industry in Cornwall will be benefiting from that. We've actually increased the days of the week that we're producing by an extra day, and that's created 35 job opportunities within our business in production, distribution, and back of house staff. So it's very good news.
My name is Fatma Zilzila, the founder of Ecosaf from Kuwait, where we face many environmental problems related to waste pollution, deforestation, and lack of information. We are collecting recyclables from houses, schools, and businesses in order to recycle them. In exchange of your recyclables, you get a treat.
Dan usaha saya menggarap lahan hutan.
Morning again, everybody. Goodness me, in the last half hour, have we heard from a government minister the death knell for holidays abroad this year? The Environment Secretary on the programme in the last few minutes. And this is what he was saying, more or less. We'll talk about it in more details. It comes after British holidaymakers flooded back from Portugal late last night, with the country being taken off the green list in the last few hours. This is what he said.
People will make their own individual judgments on this.
What do you think? I mean, it's a very dynamic situation at the moment.
It is. I will be staying at home. I have no intention of travelling or going on a holiday abroad this summer. Some people may, but they have to understand that there are obviously risks in doing so because it is a dynamic situation. But I think most people will probably decide this year to stay at home, holiday at home. We've got some fabulous places to visit in this part of the country, not least, of course, Cornwall, although it'll be a very busy summer, I'm sure, Dan.
And that's the right thing to do?
I think my advice to people would be a holiday at home. We've got some great places here. There aren't many countries that are on that red list. But obviously, you know, some people will want to travel abroad. There are still a small number of countries on that green list. If they want to do that, they can. But obviously, they'll have to understand that there are risks in doing so as well.
Tamara is here. Goodness, wasn't expecting him to say that.
No, we weren't expecting him to say that. And that's because although many people have booked trips to places which are on the amber list, including, of course, Portugal, which went onto the amber list in the early hours of this morning, because this list is reviewed every 3 weeks, and they'd hoped that as we came to later in the summer to the school holidays in July and August, trips to other European countries may be possible. And of course, when this traffic light system was announced, the idea was, and Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, said at the time, that this would be a safe return to international travel. What George Eustice just told you was that although it was the government's intention that more and more countries would come onto the green list and there would be more options, that hasn't happened, and that really the biggest risk to what we've achieved with the vaccine programme and opening up is that the idea that a variant might come from a different country and derail it. So his advice, he says, is to stay in the UK all summer, and he said he'll be doing that in Cornwall. I think it might be quite pricey to book a holiday in Cornwall if you're looking at doing so now, but certainly the government minister has really put a dampener on people's hopes for having a holiday abroad later in the summer.
And it does look, potentially, put it to him as well, that Freedom Day might be pushed back a fortnight or so, but he was not having it that had anything to do with the UK being slow, some say, in closing the border with India.
That's right. His message on the opening up on June the 21st was what we've heard from the government for the last 10 days. They're looking at the data closely. They'll take that decision on Monday, and we hear that there's wrangling behind the scenes about whether they should relax some freedoms, but, for example, keep people working from home. But, yes, questions about the Indian variant continue and whether they were too slow to put it on the red list.
OK, for now, Tamara, thank you. Tamara with us throughout the course of the programme. Of course. As we've been hearing, there were certainly a fleet of airline passengers rushing back to the UK in an effort to avoid quarantine restrictions from Portugal last night. Our producer, John Jarman, documented his journey home.
Here in Faro Airport in the Algarve in southern Portugal, we had to change our flights, come back a day early from our lovely holiday down here. It's been beautiful, but the amber list announcement was something that did change our plans. So we were probably one of the lucky ones coming back 24 hours early. Wasn't too bad at all. But for others, we've heard people who've had to cut short their holidays significantly. And there was a bit of a mad rush for flights when the announcement was made. So when we were booking flights, we saw they went up significantly within the space of 5 minutes. Firstly, we went on to the website to book flights, and they were about £90. Within 5 minutes, they'd shot up to 150. This is actually the second time we've been at this airport in the last 3 days, because we had to get a COVID test here a couple of days ago, which meant we had to queue for a couple of hours, but it was worth it so that we didn't have the stress of doing that today. So as you can see, it's a little bit busier here, but it's not too bad. And obviously, we've been very lucky to go abroad during a pandemic. Not everyone gets to do that.
John is with us now. Hello to you, John.
Morning, Kay. How are you doing?
Morning. I am fine now. Given everything that's happened, was it worth the trip?
I think it was worth the trip. Yeah, it was worth the trip. It was certainly a bit of added stress at certain parts of the holiday. When it got moved to the amber list, it was something that we had to act quite quickly on in terms of booking flights, as I discussed there briefly. When we heard about the amber list announcement on Thursday, we went on to try and book flights to come back a day early, and they were shooting up genuinely every 5-10 minutes in terms of going up £50 and then £100. So that was something that certainly added a little bit of stress, and it's just another added element that people have got to bear in mind if they're going on holiday abroad this summer. You know, we had to get a test before we went out there. Then we had to get a test before we came back. And then I've got to do a test tomorrow, 2 days after we come back as well. And certainly with the Algarve, because of the announcement, there was a shortage of tests over the weekend in terms of lots of people trying to book labs so they could get tests and come back before the amber announcement came into place. So that just was another added element of sort of stress to the holiday, but it was worth it, to answer your question. I think it was a lovely week away. We managed it. Luckily, we were only had to come back about 24 hours early, but it's just something for holiday makers to bear in mind when they're going away this summer.
Indeed so. But as a result, of course, you're having to spend your birthday today in the UK when you were expecting to spend it in Portugal. As a result, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take you to Cornwall with me at the weekend for the G7. How does that sound?
That sounds lovely. Probably not quite as relaxing as Portugal, but still a nice little trip away.
We'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do. Lovely to see you, JJ. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay.
Thank you. Meantime, an airport COVID testing provider has warned labs can't cope with the volume of tests needed for holidaymakers to go abroad. They're saying airline passengers should prepare for expected delays and disappointment this summer. Now joined by the Managing Director of AKEA Life, and that's Ben Paglia. Hello to you, Ben. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. How dire is it?
Hi, Kay. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I think the situation at the moment is not too bad because the amount of people travelling is quite small. The issue that we've seen in the last few weeks at our own testing facility is quite an increased number of people having to use our express services, largely because they haven't received some of the postal tests that they've been expecting. And even when they have received them, they haven't necessarily been given the results on time. And as a result of that, they're having to pay extra to get tested again at a facility like ourselves at Liverpool Airport.
Missed flights, test flights delayed or lost altogether. Is it actually worth going on holiday abroad this year?
Good question. I think it is a lot more stressful now. I don't think anybody could deny that. As the gentleman before me was pointing out, there's a lot of tests to be done before you fly out, before you fly back, and then when you arrive back in the country. I think if we all get better organised with it and there's a lot more clarity for every individual as to what to get and when to get it and where to get it, I actually think it can be quite streamlined. So I do still think holidays can be worthwhile and not too stressful. I'm not a big fan of the postal services that a lot of airline providers and laboratories are now offering. I understand the need to try and make things cheaper. I fully support that, but that might not necessarily need to be at the expense of people's stress levels in their holidays. Because one of the challenges with the postal services, you're relying on so many moving parts. With myself, what I would do is I would find clinic-based testing providers to bring the stress level down, make sure it's done by a professional, send that to the lab with an internal courier system, etc. And you've got a really good customer support team to help with any questions or queries. But at the moment, I think it's still a bit piecemeal, and we've seen a big number of people having quite traumatic journeys because they haven't got their results through and they're on the way to the airport.
When do you think it's going to get better? When are these laboratory testing conditions going to stabilise? When's the Postal Service going to be able to cope?
Good question. I mean, it's at the minute for me, it's not so much about testing capacity. I think there's a huge amount of testing capacity within the laboratory system. I think it's more the front end, the logistics, the customer service side of it. I think a lot of the labs need to up their game in that respect in order to be able to provide what they're promising. So I think it will come with time. I'd just like to see more collaborations with providers like ourselves to work better, as opposed to just going necessarily direct to the consumer and trying to sell them cheap tests, which might not necessarily mean them getting the results that they want at the time that they need them. So I do think it will come with time, but I'd like to see more collaboration with providers like ourselves on the ground at the airports in order to provide services better, bring prices down at that end, and hopefully over the next few weeks and months that can happen.
OK, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Someone who has been very badly impacted on the fact that Portugal moved from green to the amber list from 4 o'clock this morning. They stand to lose out due to that lack of tourist traffic, and that is Chitra Stern. And she's the owner and founding board member of Martinol Family Resorts in Portugal. Hello to you. We've spoken before. You were very hopeful that this summer would improve for you guys. What impact has the decision made by the British government had on your business?
Well, Kay, it was the sudden impact that we had to face. It was announced that we were on the green list and we had lots of bookings. And then suddenly, we had to face this sudden surge of people having to book their return flights. Thankfully, it was May half term, so people were leaving on Sunday anyway. But it was a difficult thing to face. And of course, we're facing lots of cancellations now. 600 emails and phone calls, and it hasn't been easy.
How have you dealt with those sudden cancellations? Have you got enough tourists from other countries to continue with the hotels staying open or not?
Well, we are getting bookings from other countries such as France, Switzerland, Germany, Luxembourg, even Belgium. However, the UK's, British business represents around half of our business in the Algarve. And in fact, in Cascais, even though it's not traditionally full with British or even half full with British guests, this May half term, we had a hotel full of British guests. So I would say with travel patterns are changing, and there's more travel within Europe, but we can't hope to replace British business with other business right now because we're trying.
Do you think Brits?
It's a tough situation.
Sorry. Do you think Brits should still come, even if you are on the amber list?
Living here, it feels different. Of course, I'm not in London or the UK right now. We feel we've controlled the cases quite well. There's a lot of mask wearing still. There are lots of rules that apply everywhere. And the vaccination rate is progressing very well since we got supplies. And, there are some guests, around 20% of the calls are saying, we'll shorten our holiday, we'll still come and face the quarantine. We'll do that extra test when we get back home. So I think it's not just me, even some British people are still coming on holiday. And if you're booking a villa with a pool, or, all of our hotels have a lot of space around, it depends on where you're going. So I would say do it if you can afford to take that holiday with these extra restrictions, because people have been waiting a long time to spend time with their family. So I think it's, people should take that special trip if they can.
Okay. Good to talk to you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. All the best.
You too. Now, there's been a big warning today about our oceans. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore has more.
Veiled in a light mist, what happens at sea is out of sight and out of mind. But Greenpeace is on a mission to expose destructive fishing practices in British waters. For 6 months, its boats will patrol ostensibly protected areas off the south coast, looking for super trawlers with nets a mile long that scoop up everything in the way. A couple of miles offshore, we found David. In his small boat, he can't compete. There's barely any fish left.
The nets I use now for mackerel, they're 300 yards long. We used to use 100 yards. Put it in for half an hour, got a day's work and went home. Now, I put the net in 3 times yesterday. 13 fish.
Operation Ocean Witness is also looking for evidence of this, the gouged, almost lifeless devastation left by trawlers dragging heavy fishing gear along the bottom.
Right now, the UK government stands up on a world stage and claims to be a leader in ocean protection because it's got all of these marine protected areas surrounding its coastline. However, inside these protected areas, you're still allowed to do pretty much whatever you like. So we're seeing bottom trawling, that's fishing where you're dragging nets along the bottom. We're seeing dredging. We're seeing all kinds of destructive fishing that is completely unsustainable.
The UK has set aside 64 offshore areas that on paper protect habitats like reefs and corals. But in 62 of them, trawlers last year dragged heavy fishing gear along the bottom for a total of 68,000 hours. That's a rise of 10% from 2019. Greenpeace wants the practice banned in conservation areas.
The ocean quickly bounces back once it's given proper protection. Research suggests that within 5 years there are so many fish that they spill out into surrounding areas where fishing boats can still operate. It's a win-win for both the environment and the industry.
The government has announced plans for a pilot scheme of highly protected zones with a ban on all damaging activities. But Greenpeace says it's nowhere near enough. 30% of the ocean needs meaningful protection to sustain marine life and keep fish on the menu. Thomas Moore, Sky News in New Haven.
Well, the Professional Association of Diving Instructors has created a charity dedicated to driving location action for global ocean conservation. I want to talk about that in more detail, and we're going to take you all the way to California to speak to the Chief Marketing Officer of PADI, and that's Kristen Villette-Worth. Hello to you. It's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us on World Oceans Day. What are you hoping to achieve with this initiative?
Thank you, Kay. It's so nice to be here, and a happy good morning to you on celebration of World Oceans Day. What we're really hoping to achieve is to really achieve a balance between humanity and ocean. What you've just described there and the good reporting that's just been done has shown that there are tremendous threats facing our oceans, and we as citizens of this planet need to do a better job to find that balance between humanity and ocean, and we can only do that if we believe that there are solutions in place. So we have started this foundation to help not only divers get involved, but also non-divers get involved in being part of the solution, and instead of just looking at some of the problems that exist that are quite real problems.
What sort of debris are we talking about?
Well, that's a great question. There is a ton of marine debris out in our oceans, and getting more and more through some of the marine debris that's coming through the rivers and waterways. So in order to rid the debris and of our oceans, we really need to get into the source in which that's coming from. In partnerships, we can accomplish that, and we really truly can rid our oceans of debris, not just through what you're seeing on screen here, which is certainly the divers taking actions themselves at the local level, but actually putting interceptors in to collect the debris before it gets to the ocean. And that's truly the key. We need divers to really understand and validate the data so that we can, we have a unique, insight in mind is what divers see. I think one of your reporters said it's out of sight, out of mind for so many people, but divers have that unique perspective where we can actually see what's going on under the sea. And by doing so, we can actually provide valuable data to be able to send that back to see if some of these partnerships that we're talking about are actually working and intercepting some of the debris that is going into the ocean, and really prevent that from happening. And that's our goal.
And what sort of marine species is most at risk?
Great question. There are quite a few marine species at risk, and really what needs to be protected is the apex predators. They are the most vulnerable, believe it or not. For example, sharks and rays are quite vulnerable, and when they get overfished, it puts an imbalance in the entire population and marine habitats. So we need to look and do additional monitoring to understand what those fish populations are, the marine mammal populations are, the apex predator populations are, so that we can really look at legislative issues to put better bans on things like shark fishing and some of those apex predators, which are so valuable to keeping the balance of our ecosystems at play.
Kristen, how much longer have we got left to make a difference?
We've got to start today, Kay. That's the key. We are hopeful. As long as you combine hope and action, we believe that certainly anything is possible. And I think one of the individuals just before me was talking in your video there about there's things that we can do. The marine protected areas and proper enforcement with marine protection is what's going to be critical. Protecting 30% of our oceans by 2030 has to be done. We just can't wait any longer. So we're talking about in the next decade, we need to take real, meaningful action in order to save our oceans. And that's certainly what we intend to do, again, with divers, but also non-divers.
Midnight where you are. I better let you get some sleep, and then you can enjoy World Ocean Day tomorrow. Kristen Villette, PADI, Chief Marketing Officer, thank you for joining us. Thank you so lot.
Thank you, Kay.
Thank you. And for more news like that and stories from the people trying to stop climate change, you can watch the Daily Climate Show here on Sky News. You can see my friend and colleague Anna Jones every day at 6:30 and 9:30 p.m. Or if you're on the go, you can download and listen to the latest edition of our weekly Climate Cast podcast, available now wherever you get your podcast, as they say in the trade. What's happening as far as the weather's concerned? Here's Naz. Hi, Naz.
Hi, good morning. It's looking fine and sunny for most places today, not everywhere though. And then as we head into the weekend, it really will be hotting up. For some spots, we could have a heat wave.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Good morning. It's going to be hotting up into this weekend as the high pressure builds and dominates the scene across the UK. But until then, we've still got some Atlantic influence, bringing cloudier skies across parts of Ireland, particularly western parts of Ireland, Northern Ireland and western Scotland for today. It's a dull start across these areas this morning with patchy light rain and drizzle that will continue across these parts this afternoon. Elsewhere, lots of sunshine first thing. Quite a cool start. Murky as well around southern and eastern coast, but brighter into this afternoon. But eastern parts of Scotland, I think, turning cloudier, perhaps for parts of northern England as well, but otherwise warm and sunny and dry elsewhere.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.